It works. Let's go. Just realized I'm old. I just walked out to get my glasses because my eyes hurt from staring at a computer screen for too long. Now I look like a nerd for the first healer's journey. We have Twitch going, so I can see as well. Yeah, that's right. They're getting rid of the desktop app on Twitch.
and hopefully this works.
Ooh, fancy transition.
I know. And it works. I hope everyone can hear us. I am new to streaming and I am trying to get all of this sorted out. So if things are borked, bear with me. I'm learning. So
Hello, everybody.
hello everyone. So welcome to our brand new show called A Healer's Journey. So might as well get the spiel out of the way. So, the information presented on this discussion is of a general nature and is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. While many of the people here have various forms of mental health training, they are not your mental health professional. The discussion is not a replacement for mental or physical care or for the diagnosis of any mental health condition or illness. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on this inaugural episode of A Healer's Journey. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Goku, and I have with me here my co-host Matt. So, this new show is within the Gardens MH podcast, and what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be working with a variety of other mental health professionals. I have a few lined up that are pretty interested in joining this show. So, who are we? So, Gardens Mental Health is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on promoting mental health awareness throughout the gaming community. We strive to be a first step in assisting individuals in gathering meaningful resources and a safe and inclusive atmosphere. A healer's journey is just another way for us to normalize talking about mental health with other mental health professionals discussing their journey in becoming a mental health professional and their unique abilities to help clients through some most challenging times. So, the whole core of this show is essentially healers, which are often the most often overlooked or under talked about party members in any like raid group or fantasy group. We really want to bring them to the forefront, to have them be that central figure so we can talk about who they are, what they do, and just get their story. And there's been often this debate going on mental health professionals, school, and lived experience. So we're going to hopefully kind of shatter some of those barriers to essentially show that a lot of mental health professionals do have lived experience. So thanks for joining me tonight, Matt. I know this has been a long time coming.
And I've been excited the whole rest of the way. I will say I want to give you all of the credit here. You've built this from the ground up. So not only am I honored, but I'm very excited to be a part of this.
I've have a few interested people, so we're gonna have some really interesting conversations in the coming weeks. I just had just a small conversation with one today that is super excited to join in a later time. So I don't want to give their names up just yet, but we have a lot of amazing guests, and I know they have amazing stories.
Very excited. Very excited, actually.
So hopefully everyone is sitting comfortably. We have our nice little roaring fire in front of us that me and Irez have been working very hard. So thank you, Irez, for just putting up with all of my crazy demands, for making all of the graphics for this show. I think it turned out really nice.
I love the whole aspect of sitting around a fire and having this type of conversation. I think I've had my most...
Your adult beverage.
Yeah, well, I got water right now, but I think I can safely say I have had my most meaningful and deep conversations around a fire pit or around a fire with friends, with family. So I love this whole theme as well too.
Oh, completely agree. Same with me. I've had some of the best conversations with some of my friends just sitting around a fire and chatting about life.
There's something about this. something about a roaring fire, man.
Yeah, it just makes you feel comfortable. And oftentimes we see it in these fantasy settings after a long trek. The party will just sit around and talk before they all go to bed. And they have these deep, meaningful conversations. And this is kind of what I wanted this show to be, of being it rather informal, sitting around a fire. I metaphorically sitting on a log, as Joe mentioned. I use the Canadian term of stoop, but just sitting around and chatting about our journey.
Yeah.
So, as mental health professionals, we have all had instances in our lives and situations that have happened that kind of drew us to this field. And I guess I can go first. For me, what drew me to the field of psychology is I've had a couple of hockey coaches, and one in particular that was studying psychology. So, big shocker, I'm a Canadian and I play hockey.
No.
No. So, back when I was probably like in fifth grade or so, I had a hockey coach, and he was studying psychology, and he was one of my idols, and I always found that fascinating, just the study of psychology. But even before that, I was interested in the field because I think it was around, I was 7 or 8. I want to say 8 years old. Again, coming from a hockey tournament, shocker. Me and my family were in a big car accident, and both of my parents
Mm.
were. Oh, I guess my laundry's clean. Sorry about that. Siri just told me my laundry's clean, so we're doing it live.
Oh, technology.
Yeah.
That's cool, actually.
So, like I was saying, around 8 years old, me and my family were in a big car accident, and my parents were pretty hurt. I was relatively unscathed physically. So,
Mm.
what had happened, we had pulled over on the side of the road because my dad had to go to the washroom, and he went into a small diner. That was just on the side of the road next to a highway. And when he came back, both my parents sitting up front, I was sitting in the back. This is back in the early 90s. So we had like the really big like boat cars. And
Hmm.
I believe it was a drunk driver. I think he fell asleep at the wheel and never stopped and rear-ended us. So my dad came into the car, looked in his rearview mirror and just said, "Brace yourselves." And
Oh
moments later,
God.
we got rear-ended. Back window shattered over me. I was lucky enough to just escape with like some minor cuts and bruises. Mom hit her head on the window. Kind of had to be taken to the hospital. Some nothing life threatening, but as a young 8-year-old being very shaken up,
Yeah.
I had a reaction as any 8-year-old would. And after that, I had a hard time like going to school. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a hard time being on the sides of cars. I always had to sit in the middle of cars. So my parents took me to a psychologist that really helped me during that time. And that's something that really resonated with me. And it's something that stayed in my mind that I want to do that as well. And
Yeah.
when every kid was saying, "Oh, I want to be a police officer. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a psychologist." I was that weird kid. And in high school, I said, "Nope, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to follow the artist's dreams." I went to art school, recognized what all life as an artist would be. Still love drawing, and just went back into psychology. And here I am, a psychologist, and I work with people and help them every day.
It is so amazing that at a young age, that was like, nope. Because you're right. At that age, everybody is like, I don't want to say superficial jobs, but it's, not knowing what goes into being a police officer or a firefighter or a
Mm.
doctor. So everybody says it, I think, at that age. But to have it so concretely, like, nope, going to be a psychologist based off of just the experiences that you had with one. And I think me and you can safely say that was a damn good psychologist, because if
Yeah.
they left that lasting of an impact, that's a good psychologist. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. What I liked is going there, making me feel calm, not feeling pressured, opening up when I wanted to, a lot of play therapy, and again, leaned
Hmm.
into my interest of drawing at the time. So I worked a lot with like art therapy through there and kind of being able to express some of the concerns that I had.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. It's because of just trying to formulate words. It's again that lasting impact, but also too, there was a part of, I mean, from what it sounds like, there was a part of you that was very insightful and new. Like, oh, this is a person that's helping me. This is a person who cares and who wants to see, me be able to sit in the back seat, not in the middle of a car,
Mhm.
and behind my mom or dad, not in between them. So like it's such a positive thing to hear, and the effect that it had is awesome in that regard, I should say.
I think one thing that really helped me, both of my parents worked at that same hospital. So we have two
Mm,
hospitals here in my city. We have one French, one English, but both are bilingual. My parents worked at the French one, and I remember since being a really young kid, being very familiar and comfortable at the hospital because I would go visit mom and dad. I just go there because of XYZ reason for after school or going to an appointment or something. So not being scared of the hospital, I think that is one thing that helped me to kind of surmount that. Well, I'm just going to see someone at a hospital that I'm comfortable with. And I think that's one big thing as well. It's that comfort that a lot of people need. And
yeah.
it's one thing that I'm trying to carry over in my own practice with the decor in my office, trying to make it as comfortable for people. Still have a ways to go, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about you,
Absolutely.
Matt? What are some things that drew you to the field of mental health?
So interestingly enough, it didn't start with mental health. So me and my sister are 9 years apart. So at when was she born? She was born in April, so I was probably still. Either way, we found out during during the pregnancy that my sister was gonna, has Down syndrome. For those who are unaware, Down syndrome is a genetic disorder where you have an extra chromosome 21. And really what it causes is just delays in a sense, delays in speech, delays in learning, delays in walking. There are also some physical conditions as well too. My sister had the webbed feet, which she'll yell at me if she hears this, but it was really cool to look at. Um, but then it was kind of gross at the same time. So because of all of that, she had what's known, at least in New York, and I'm pretty sure it's known everywhere, as early intervention services. And so people came into the home and like did physical therapy with her, which for an infant is hysterical because all they're doing is just like lifting the legs. And I remember I would come home from school and they would still be there and they'd be working, and I would watch and be a part of it. And it was all different people because the occupational therapist would come, the physical therapist would come. Um, it wasn't. I don't think we had a behavior specialist at that young of an age, but that did come later down the road. And so there was just this idea in me, like, why are all of these people coming to help my sister? I had no idea at the age of 9. Like, why do these people care? Um, and then there was the cynic in me, in Brooklyn. Oh, they're getting paid. Oh, they're, just, doing this because, and then as I grew up and started working in mental health, I realized, well, they weren't paid that much. But that was always the thing in my head. Like, why do these people care so much? And that really sort of like dug in a little bit. I held on to that for a long, long time. Fast forward kind of like to high school in a sense. My sister was more, I got involved with more of my sister's programs, volunteering, being a part of like just her school in a sense. Like I would always, like, they were very kind. I don't know if they're still around, but William O'Connor in Brooklyn, you guys, made my life, but you also made my sister's life so much better. And it was just amazing the response that they had, because not only did they care for my sister, but they cared for my family as well too. So again, I have these slew of people who are giving my parents support, because not that they had no idea, but this was a whole new playground. They had no idea, like, oh, okay, how do we raise a child with Down syndrome? My father always jokes. He goes, we barely raised you. How do we do this now? And it just, again, these people who came together, and it's like, no, we're going to care. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure that you got all the resources that you need, so on and so forth. And then college came, and I'm taking psychology classes, because in my head at that point, I'm like, nope, going to be a psychologist. And I wanted to intern. So now I'm still living in New York at this time, and I'm like, I want to intern. And the places the school would give me were awful, not answering, just didn't want to talk to me, because I was just some young, annoying kid in college, like looking to work for free, which you would think people would jump on top of that, but no.
You would think.
So I emailed a bunch of private practices. I was like, hey, I'm a student in so-and-so. I'm going for psychology. I am looking for experience and will work for free. I will do anything. And one place got back to me, and they were like, sure, you can be a peer in our children's group. And I was like, whoa, what? Excuse me? That's not what I signed up for.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So they met with me, they spoke with me, and I was working part-time for individuals with developmental disabilities. That stuck with me, and I worked in various places. So I was working at the time with individuals with special needs, and they were like, yeah, no, you're perfect for this group. And I was transformed from that point, because the person who was my mentor, and I will shout her out because she as well changed my life, Joanne Leather, a licensed clinical social worker, took me under her wing and was like, we're going to teach you how to be a social worker. And she taught me how to write my first note. She taught me how to document. She taught me how to run a group. I was doing none of this in school. They were not teaching me this.
Doesn't really teach you a lot of these things. Unfortunately, no. I'm sure your program was very similar to mine, where for me, undergrad, I touched zero clinical work. I had to seek out a lot of that clinical experience by myself.
Yeah, very similar. There was one opportunity, but it happened like it wasn't the greatest how it was run, unfortunately. So I had legitimate hands-on experience and fell in love with it. And she basically was like, "Nah, you're going to be a social worker." And I said, "Okay." And
if you say
so. Then if you say so. And I wrote my first paper with her that was published. and it's a little bit outdated now because it was a paper specifically like clinical aspects and treatment of Asperger's, because back then it was still in the DSM as Asperger's, so it's a bit outdated now. But that was my first paper that got published, and the fact that we got somebody emailing us from Ireland asking us about that paper is still blowing my mind. But it's that was sort of my journey, and then I went through school, my master's program at NYU, and worked 7 days a week with full-time school, full-time job, and internship. Don't recommend it. And then there it was history. Got everything that I needed and started working not where I am currently, but started working within the field, and I've loved it ever since. And the reason I started out my LMSW career, I was a behavior health specialist for adults with developmental disabilities. I would do groups within group home settings and residential, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I want to go back into that field. Not that I'm going to step on a pedestal right now and start yelling that field needs much more funding and needs to be funded a lot more. I won't do that just yet. But it's I had a blast. I used to have just conversations with the individuals, as that was the sort of name if we were talking about them in general. But I would have not therapy sessions. Like, they would come down to my office. I'll never forget. I had this one, I forget how old she was. She had to have been in like her 50s maybe. And it was like 8:00 at night. She would come into my office, just barrel through the door, and I was okay with it. Sit down, make herself a cup of coffee with my Keurig. She would take my Keurig pods, and again, had no problem. I didn't care. Take my Keurig pod, throw it in, make herself a cup of coffee, and just tell me about her day. It was not a structured therapy session by any stretch. It was just, this is going on, and I can't stand this one at home because this is happening. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what can we do? And she was like, I don't know. Just make coffee. I was like, I can do that. I can. And I'm doing my notes. Yeah. I was like, I can make coffee. And it was just a lot of fun. And it was something that field I felt needed, because I think sometimes when we talk about developmental disabilities and special needs, a lot of times that population is spoken to, not with. And I was the exact opposite. I was like, no, I'm going to talk. We're going to have a conversation. I'm going to speak to you, not at you. And then I would go into homes as well too, and work with families, work with individuals just like one-on-one, or even like bring them into the community as well too for respite. And again, it was the most fun I ever had in a field. And it's really all thanks to my sister, who sort of opened up my eyes to that in a sense. And, it started from just watching other people care and give a damn. And I wanted to be one of those people who gave a damn. And it echoes into the work that I do now. It echoes into everything I do in case management, because I don't talk at people. I don't tell people what to do. I don't, it's what can we do? What are we looking at? What do you feel you need? And we make it happen if we can. So
what surprises me is just how much impact one person can have on the life of people. And it's something that I try to be cognizant about, but I don't always get recognized, because you're just doing this like the day-to-day slog of going through clients. But sometimes it just
Mhm.
hits you as to, I am actually making an impact. I am helping people the way that that one psychologist had helped me. And
Yeah,
hopefully it
I
sets them off or on this path.
it's interesting that you say that, yeah, because I know so the work that I do now is not on a one-to-one sort of therapeutic style. It's much more of a referral and resource gathering and appointment setting and very quick, like I don't even want to use the word crisis, but it's just like brief sort of contact
Because
and
I think
getting
we
getting
skipped
basically
over one of the questions was
oh
just tell us who you are and what you do. So what
oh
do you do as a social worker?
yeah, sure. So I currently um work for a provider, and I do what's known as case management. And really what that is I hold a caseload. In particular, I'm working with um, children, adolescents, and young adults, basically up until the age of about 21, and their families, in basically connecting them with the proper services that either A, they need, or B, that they want, right? And there's a reason why I differentiate the two. Because sometimes I do get hospitals calling where it's like, hey, I do have somebody being discharged and they need X, Y, and Z services. Cool, I can do that. But then I get them on the phone and they're like, yeah, I want that, but I really need this. I really need, or I'll have a parent, like, I really need more community support, less office support, or less like clinical support. Like, they want that, but they also want, like, I need something more. And so that's my job. That's my role is either finding out, connecting to the right people. I'm the middleman in a sense. And I've always liked that because a large part of social work, at least to me, is connections.
Mm-hmm.
And the list of resources, the catalog of resources that I have in my head. Um, if Jeopardy had a social work, sort of like episode, I'd win. Um,
I'm
and
sure you would.
I'll gladly brag about that one. But I loved making connections. I love talking to other people to get what somebody else needs. I did it in a hospital setting for years, and it like I still have those connections that I call on sort of every so often. And it really is, it's very much this like New York, like, hey, listen, I got a guy who can get you here, but we got to do X, Y, and Z first. And I do the X, Y, and Z. And I enjoy that because of what you said. It's that little interaction, it's that little assistance that can make such a difference to somebody else. Right? I'm the one that's getting them to, or assisting them, I should say, in getting them the services and the treatment that they need. So my role is small at times, but it's integral
And
because
of what I'm getting, it's they come to you with this bag of stuff and this insurmountable mountain to climb, and you're that Sherpa of let's go down this path.
yes, I am I am 10 and I am res when it comes to rating.
Mhm.
I do the same thing, but more for resources and social services. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And sometimes it'll be small. Sometimes it's like, hey, I need a therapist. Cool. Here we go. Here's your appointment. Got this set up. They know that you're coming, blah, blah, blah. Or it's like, hey, my child has X, Y, and Z. There's, behavioral, there's medical, there's social. They need help on all three. And I'm like, okay, let me get you to somebody for medical. I'll handle behavior and social. And it's a village because there's sometimes these conference calls where it's myself, a doctor, a medical professional, and the family sort of just organizing and collaborating like what's going to be the most beneficial. And I love that. I love the connection. I love the treatment team aspect of things. The collaboration between all disciplines is something I think is I love, and I love being a part of it in a sense too.
Essentially, you've become that team that was there to help your family and your sister.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely been the one person who gives a damn.
Because for so many
and
people, they've met so many people that just don't give a damn.
yes. And I get that a lot too, because not that I make cold phone calls. I don't cold call typically. Um, but I've gotten the why are you helping? I've gotten that once or twice. And the professional answer is, well, I'm calling from your provider that, we noticed that there was X, Y, and Z admission, so we wanted to reach out to support. That's like the professional answer that I have to write. But in my head, I'm like, because you need help, because there's a need. Not that somebody needs help, but like there's a need here that I hope to help with, I should say. Because I may not be the answer. I only may be around for like a day or two, and that's okay. Because I'd rather get you to the place that you need to be.
Because it varies from person to person. You're the one organizing all of these resources, whereas me as a psychologist, I'm that one person that, okay, you come see me every week, 2 week, every month, and we deep dive into the nitty gritty. And I kind of get my hands dirty in a lot of these issues, but I recognize that I'm not able to do everything. I need to have OT, I need to have a social worker, I need to have the family physician, the psychiatrist, the caseworker to help this person get to where they need. I'm just one part of this big machine.
The old saying of "it takes a village" is true no matter what age.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're working with or you have somebody who is going through a lot, be it diagnosed with something, be it just socially, there's a lot going on. There are the supports out there, but I think unfortunately sometimes, not that they're not advertised, but sometimes they're not easily accessible. So having having or knowing where to turn to somebody to have that knowledge is key.
And not a lot of people know about all of these resources because they are so vulnerable or having some of these issues that they may not be aware. And unfortunately, I'm a psychologist that works in private practice. I miss working in like multidisciplinary environments. So I miss working at the prison. I miss working at the hospital where I would have these teams. But I still love private practice because I really get to dig deep into some of these issues. But I miss having the support of people around because we kind of have to reach out. And when people come see us in private practice, generally we're not their first call. They've either gone through the system or they've kind of pushed this off for years.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually told some clients that you should have come see me 5 years ago because they just been pushing this away. But it's amazing to see because at the office that I'm at, we are a few psychologists. We have a few interns that are in psychology as well, but we have a few counselors. So not a lot of people see counselors as kind of this other form of mental health professional that they do really good work. They just do different work. Just like a social worker does really good work. Right. They just do different work.
Yeah.
But we're all working together to get to that same point.
Exactly. And I guess not to backtrack, but I think that was the other reason too why I wanted social work or why I did change my mind, because I made it sound like I was forced and I really wasn't.
I just strong-armed you.
I mean, she could have. But oh, and we had fights because she was a Met fan and I'm a Yankee fan, and oh boy, did we fight.
Ooh.
Um, but
I'm a Blue Jays fan, so.
oh, go away. No, I'm joking.
Hey, it's the only Canadian team we have in baseball. Okay.
It's true. It's true. Oh, I went to a Blue Jays Yankee game once, and the bleachers are awful to the Blue Jays. I mean, they were awful in general, but they were so bad.
It's the only Canadian team. We had the Expos, and then poof, they're gone.
Then they went away. But that, to your point, that was kind of like the other reason why I wanted to be a social worker, because I was able to do so many different things. You know, I was a behavioral health specialist for developmentally disabled. Then I went into medical social work in a hospital. Then I went into chemical dependency, which was much more clinical and hands-on and group focused, and also a lot of fun. And everybody says that differently. It's everybody's like, no, substance abuse, that's going to be awful. I was like, okay. I went into it anyway, and I was like, this is great, because that was also the aspect too where you can really see that you're making a difference in somebody's life as well too. Because I saw them at their most vulnerable. And then I went into what I'm doing now. And so it's the versatility is also something that really attracted me, because I was like, not that I could do anything, but like there was so much that I could like dabble in and gain knowledge into that as well too.
But mental health is such a large field, and I feel that it's not something that we are taught about in school. We don't learn about a lot of that in school. Talking about school, how was your like journey through undergrad and grad school? Because we all have different paths and different trials and tribulations, as we should say, through school.
So I'm laughing because there's a friend of mine in chat right now who actually went to undergrad with me.
Okay.
He's the one that actually was telling me that it's a good time to be a Leafs fan.
I'm fingers crossed for my Leafs. Fingers crossed.
So, and I'm going to beat him to the punch here, because he'll always say that I got him through school. And yep, there we go. Got me through college. I knew he was going to say it. I still to this day say it's not true. But undergrad was a lot of fun. And I'm so glad he's in chat, because I'm going to tell the story of the pigeons.
Oh, I want to hear the story. Is it the same type of story as geese?
No, no. We took an experimental psychology class, and
did you do a Skinner box?
We did a Skinner box.
Oh, you lucky bastard!
Did a Skinner box, and we had pigeons, and we were responsible for the pigeons during class. We were not like given the pigeon; it was not set up for us. We had to get the pigeons, and apparently, you put them in a bucket.
Okay.
I knew. I don't know. This is how we were taught to handle them. I'm sure I'm going to get canceled for this. But you gently like put them in the bucket, and then you bring it to the Skinner box and you would place them. My pigeon hated me, and I would get bit. Like, they don't hurt. It's not like there's no teeth or anything, so I'm not getting like, bloodied up on my hand. But
are they snapped?
Yeah, and I nicknamed him El Diablo because he just, and you would hear me as I'm trying to get my pigeon, like, El Diablo, get in a freaking bucket, we gotta go. And then Paul's was named Hector, as he just mentioned in the chat. So needless to say, undergrad was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. That class in particular was hard as hell. But again, it also taught me how to write an experiment, how to write a paper, right? How to cite, because that was another class that was like, if you cite anything wrong, you're failing because we're going to count it as plagiarism. And I was like, oh crap.
That class sounds so much fun to actually have like practical knowledge and experience of a cognitive concept, which is just operant conditioning.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is
And
a fundamental cornerstone of our understanding of psychology and the human mind. I just
yes,
had to learn that in a textbook. My school was just, we're very small, like French community. We're the only French university in, I think, Atlantic Canada. So if you want to
oh,
go
wow.
to French university, you go there. That's it. Or then you go to
Right.
Quebec.
So that what, and absolutely, because that's what, on a clinical sense, on a therapeutic sense, yes, it opened my eyes to like everything almost. Like, okay, this is how people learn,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is how behaviors are formed.
We're
You
just
know,
fancy
granted,
pigeons.
we are fancy pigeons, absolutely. But outside of that, like it really did and my professor challenged. He was like, "You're not going to get 100. Like nobody's getting an A." He was very upfront, and oh boy, was he right. Because people cried in that class.
People
So
underestimate how difficult, because mental health, though, and a psychology degree is seen as, oh, it's a liberal arts degree. It's not a real science. Okay, it's a soft science. It's still science as compared to like physics, biology, chemistry, which are the hard sciences. But psychology can be brutal
oh, I don't know.
because
El
it's.
Diablo thought it was a hard science.
I remember some classes in psychology that were just grueling. And it all depended on the professor that you had. And just cognitive psychology. I remember cognitive psychology was such a good class because you're learning about how we learn. But
Mhm.
there's so many ways and so many frameworks that it just made your head spin. And to this day,
Yeah.
it's kind of been drilled into my mind what are like the four types or the two types of reward and punishment through Skinner and operant conditioning. It's just drilled and buried in my mind.
Yeah, and I took both actually. I took the cognitive class and I took that behavioral class. Um, and I'm so glad I did because they were the experimental class was not an elective, but cognitive, believe it or not, was an elective.
Really?
And yeah, it was very weird. And I guess because it was undergrad, I guess that if you went further, they were going to drill it into you. I think. Um, but I remember because everybody was like, "Nope, not taking cognitive. Don't do it. Don't do it." And I was like, "No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take it." Because in
I'm a
my head, like the
masochist, might
worst.
as well.
Right. Let me torture myself. I just got bit up by pigeons. Let me go take this class. Um, but again, challenging as hell. Um, Same thing. Papers, if they were not perfect, you were not passing. And
APA style is brutal.
Because
And
yeah.
the APA manual and the website Owlet Purdue. So if there are any psychology students listening to this, use the website Owlet Purdue. It is your friend.
Website is a godsend.
Oh my God, yes. That and there was a because in psychology in our school statistics was very heavy, so we were very statistics heavy. I think with undergrad and grad school, I think I took like 4 or 5 statistics classes, and I had like one book that I found. It was a PDF book, and it saved me so many times in terms of like interpreting SPSS and writing out the results from the tables from SPSS, it was a godsend.
Oh, SPSS. What a horrific but necessary evil.
I prefer SPSS to SAS. I don't know if you
I
ever
don't even
used
think I
SAS.
played a. I was just gonna say I don't think I played around with SAS. It was strictly just SPSS.
So one of my professors was a sadist, and he wanted us to learn SAS, so SAS, which is
Yeah.
SPSS without the GUI,
Oh
so
God.
the graphical user interface. So essentially,
Oh God.
you had to learn to code your analyses, because within that SPSS you have like the script that runs it, but you can like
Yeah.
drop it down. But we had to learn that script.
That's awful.
Oh,
And just why?
because he wanted to torture us.
That's no. I'm just gonna no, because I'll be honest with you, I haven't used it since that class because I did not go into experimental or research really. So I haven't used it then, but from what I remember, if I had to learn what it did, oh no.
Oh,
No, I
I
definitely wouldn't have
used it in
passed.
that one class, and then it's gone. And the last time I used SPSS was essentially during grad school for my thesis.
Right.
But every university has a different way of viewing things, and I think people underestimate how difficult like a psychology degree can be, just because of the amount of work that it entails. And oftentimes, a lot of people that go into psychology degrees have some mental health underpinnings that they may not be fully aware of. And I know for me and a lot of the students that I work with at university, they they struggle. And for me, I struggled during undergrad and grad school to the point where I didn't know if I was going to get into grad school. My first year, because for me, high school was always easy. I don't want to toot my own horn, but for me, high school was
Mhm.
easy. I didn't need to put a lot of effort into the high school, and I got 80s, and I was content. I was going to art school. I didn't need to do more, so I
Right.
never developed good study habits. Then I hit undergrad in psychology, and I hit a few professors, and they beat me to a pulp. My first semester in psychology, I had a 0.8 GPA. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
0.8.
That's rough.
I was put on academic probation, and I clawed my way back. And I think I graduated with a 3.1, and I didn't get into grad school. I was
Mm.
destroyed that first year. Decided to take a gap year where I went back and did and redid a lot of the classes that I didn't do very well, and brought my GPA up, and didn't get to grad school again. I got waitlisted,
Oof.
and I got lucky that a few people didn't didn't want to go to this program. So I had gotten into another program because I was either going to do like the clinical doctorate here at the university that I went to, or I was going to do a distant degree at the University of Liverpool in England on forensic psychology. So
Mm.
forensics is one of my passions. I'm not working in forensics anymore, but I still love the field. My wife works in forensics, and I am so interested in what she does. Uh, but the way things are now, I'm kind of happy I'm in private practice.
Yeah.
But I was in between this, and I got lucky that a few people had dropped out. So I was able to get into grad school, which kicked my butt, and struggled, and got put on academic probation there as well because I had failed my statistics class. So I just had to claw my way back. And I'm not ashamed of this story because I use it a lot with clients. Certainly that I have to have these perfect GPAs. If not, I'm not
Hmm.
going to get a career. It's like, I didn't get a perfect GPA. I struggled my ass off, but it's not what the piece of paper really says. It's what you do after.
Right. 100%.
For you, how was that path through undergrad and grad school?
Grad school was so school I was successful in for the most part. Definitely there were like ups and downs within undergrad. Um, but I was also you put me in a structure and I'm okay. Right? So the school that I was in was very structured, at least for undergrad. They, here's your syllabus, here's your books, do it. And I was okay. When I was applying for graduate schools, I decided to gamble, which stupid. I only applied to one school, and because I wanted to go to the school and I wasn't going anywhere else, and
You had your mind
I
set on
applied.
it.
I did. It was NYU. I wanted to go. I wanted to be a hipster. No, I'm joking. I wa- I wanted to drink cold coffee on, by Washington Square Park. No. I just really wanted to go there because everybody that I interacted with became so successful and did what they wanted to do, and they all went to NYU. So in my mind, I was like, oh shit. Excuse my language, sorry.
Well,
I was like, I need to... well, Joe's going to yell at me.
Joe's not here.
I know, but he's going to yell at me. And I only applied to NYU, and I got in. Very happy. I think I cried. I think I called everybody and cried. But during grad school, NYU was tough. There was no question about it. Again, pushed me to be the best in the sense of writing, in the sense of clinical. NYU was known for its more of a clinical adaptation than it was any other avenue for social work. It wasn't really policy driven. There were classes on it, but it was like an elective you can take. Whereas psychotherapy and various modalities were mandatory. Like you had to take CBT, you had to take TBT, you had to take certain courses because that's what the school was geared towards. During that time, for me on a personal level, a lot of stuff happened within like home life. A lot of things were going on a personal level. I moved out during school, and it was, I was juggling. I really was. I said it before. I was juggling full-time school, full-time work, part-time internship. So I really was 7 days a week for at least the last year and a half of my schooling. And this is why I'm so good at talking about burnout, because I burnt out. And believe it or not, that was my first experience with therapy, was during NYU. They had walk-in hours, and I remember I was in the middle of class one day, and I was I had to leave because I was just crying. I broke down. I didn't know what I was crying about. I was just shot. And I walked across the street. They had just walk in. You can meet with like a therapist. It was like a crisis sort of like session. And I literally just cried. I felt bad for this woman that I was talking to.
You're probably not the first
just
one that just did that offloaded
Oh,
in
no.
that way.
Probably not. But I do, like, and I'll never forget, the woman was like, okay, we're going to get you set up with additional sessions. And I remember the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I can't afford it. I wish I knew what I know now then, but she literally said, she goes, no, they're free. It's through NYU. You need it, and we're putting you through for them. And again, I'm going to go back in that circle of people who give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
and it, and I had like, it was like an EAP thing. They authorized like 5-6 sessions, but it was just what I needed to basically get through and graduate. And I am so grateful for that, because it sucked. It was very rough. I didn't see friends. I didn't see family because I was working 7 days a week. Most of my friends thought, like, what happened to you?
People don't often understand how grueling it can be, how grueling that grad school can be. For me, and I make this joke all the time, is when I started grad school, didn't drink coffee, just didn't like the taste, and then
Yep.
after grad school, give me my coffee. Because it was, you wake up in the morning, you go, you eat a little lunch, go, and then it's 2 in the morning, and it's like, well, I have to go to bed.
Mm-hmm. So same exact thing. I was always drinking coffee. I
I
think my
started drinking
father
coffee in grad school, and it's stayed.
from when I got into grad school, it was 1 shot of espresso, 2 shots of espresso, 3 shots of espresso. Like, it kept increasing. And Amanda, who was my girlfriend at the time, not my wife, she's like, your heart's not gonna take it. I was like, but the bean juice helps. And
Give me the bean juice.
right. So I'm back down to 2 shots of espresso, and not every day. No. But it's amazing what we sort of do to kind of cope with situations like that. Mine was coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm up till 2 o'clock in the morning, this paper's got to get done. I need something.
It's kind of an oxymoron of, we're teaching you to be mental health professionals to teach people how work-life balance and mental health is important, while grinding you to a pulp and ruining your own mental health.
Yep. I remember I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning once. No, excuse me, 4 o'clock in the morning, writing a 15-20 page paper on a tablet.
Ooh.
Because
did you have at least have a keyboard attached to the tablet, or on screen?
I had the shittiest keyboard in the world. It disconnected halfway through each time. Oh. And I'm in my uncle's living room at the time, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And that was one of those days where I got 2 hours of sleep, somehow drove into the city, probably not the safest thing to do, and handed in the paper, walked to the bathroom, cried. Because again, I am on 2 hours of sleep. I am shot to the bone. Yeah. And I am just like shaking and crying because, like, I can't keep doing this. And luckily that was like the last time that I did that, because I was like, no, this needs to end.
One thing I wanted,
it really is rough,
was to show that mental health professionals have some lived experience, that we have gone through things as well. We're not robots. we have emotions, we have personal lives, we go through stuff.
Oh yeah.
And even if we're a professional, we don't know how to deal with all of the stuff. I can help my clients work with things because I'm not emotionally in that moment with them. I have a third person's perspective and I can see things differently that they can. But get me off kilt with a lack of sleep, hungry, and just emotional turmoil, I won't be using the tools I say to my clients to use.
No. No.
I
I
try
I, I
to, but
am
I'm not always successful.
I am more than comfortable sharing that um in currently I am working with a therapist to address various things.
So am I.
And she she will tell me like
Oh, oh, 1 second, Matt. Something borked on my end here. Sorry about that, everyone. Are you back? I cannot hear you. What is going on? Oh, can you can hear me? I can't hear you. Oh, try it again. Can you hear me? Oh, I can. I'm starting to hear you.
how about now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what happened.
No, I have no idea what's going on. Is the video working? Let
Let
me.
me re
There. It is now working again.
Okay.
I am sorry, everyone, for the computer difficulties. I am new to streaming, and I will hopefully get this fixed in the next 5 to 10 episodes.
No, something weird happened on my end too. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I
you were
got
talking and then nothing.
yeah. I'm trying to remember now what I was talking about.
We were talking about we were both working with a therapist as well to work with our
Yes,
own things.
and I'll a lot of times my therapist would say, "Well, what would you tell a client of yours?" And I'd go and just because I'm not a therapist in that moment,
Mm.
but I'll like go right into it. It's like, yeah, well, I would say this. I would tell them to look at this. I would say. She goes, now you need to start telling yourself that. And and I'll never forget the one time she said it. I was like, but it's hard. I can't. And she just laughed. And I said, I know. I said, I know. And, but yeah, we teach it. And I don't, and I've spoken with like friends of mine who are also professionals in this field. And they'll tell me that they feel like they're hypocrites
Oh
because
yeah.
of that. Because they teach all of this, but can't follow it themselves. See, I don't. And I think that's another reason what helps when I was doing therapy. Because I'm talking to people. I'm not talking at them what they need to do. You need to practice X, Y, and Z. I will teach, I will show, but there's always going to be what works for you. What do you think is best for you? What do you think that you need? Because I know what I need, and it's just a matter of the motivation or the like what's stopping me from using these, right? So I don't feel that necessarily that sense of like hypocrisy, because everybody, no matter what the profession is, no matter who it goes through this. So I don't get that, at least personally, but I understand how everybody could feel that way, or there might be that feeling. Me, it's more of like, no, I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah, we're human. We have emotions. We don't deal with things perfectly. And I often use, there's a phrase we use down here in French. It's essentially saying le cordonnier mal chaussé, meaning
Ooh.
The shoemaker that has like beat up shoes. So the shoemaker that's making these nice, intricate, and fancy shoes just has a beat up pair of work boots.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we give so much that we don't have enough to give back to ourselves and to our loved ones, and it shows. And it's something that I'm becoming more and more cognizant about over the years, where being a mental health professional has changed my perspective on life and on people and on certain things, because as much as some people want to kind of be naive or not necessarily recognize certain things, we get affected by hearing things over and over and over again, that it changes how we view people at times. And I don't want to become very cynical, but I'm trying to kind of keep that part of me that still wants to see the good. And then there's the other part of me that just wants to smack people. Example, I had a client this week, not wanting to slap my client. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to smack the other person that did my client wrong. We had worked together like a year and a half, almost 2 years, of dealing with childhood sexual abuse from a cousin. And it took them like a year to really get through it. And they confronted that cousin. They told the family. It was a big moment. When they were finally moving forward, what happened? Another cousin started to sexually harass and assault her. God.
Just takes everything that you've done and what that client has done, I should say, and we just go, unfortunately, backwards. It's a relapse.
Yeah,
almost too, in a sense.
And it's then, all right, let's rework on these grounding tools, rework on like getting you back to a point where we can be not in that fight or flight mode, because it had just happened like 4 days ago when I saw them, and they were still in that initial shock. And I wasn't outwardly showing it to them, but internally I was screaming and swearing my head off at that person that did that to that client. Because they had worked so hard to get to that point, and for it to just be washed away.
Yeah. But it's, yeah.
You get invested, and you want to see the best. And it's made me be very much, or try to be more aware of my own emotions and how I deal with my own kids and people around me. But for you, how has being a mental health professional changed you or impacted you?
Honestly, there's a couple of different ways. I think the first one that comes right off the top of my head is I'm sometimes stronger. And what I mean by that is more on, it's taught me to be, it's going to sound weird, but it's like, it's in a sense, it's given me like a bit of like a leadership sort of building in it, right? So the reason I even say that is because when I started working at the hospital, as you know, there's so many different personalities. that are in a hospital, right? You're working with doctors, you're working with nurses. And unfortunately, the hospital that I was working in wasn't so keen on social workers. I'm not going to sit here and say that they hated us, but on the totem pole, we were not very high. But then they
When I
wanted.
worked at the prison, mental health professionals were called by other staff con lovers.
Oh, that's such.
Because it's
We.
this dichotomy between the
Uh-huh.
mental health professionals saying, let's help this person get better. And then security
Right.
teams saying, no, we need to lock that person up because they're a danger. And it's this constant back and forth.
Mm-hmm. So I was called patient lover. And I had doctors like scream, like, get this patient out of here, blah, X, Y, and Z. And finally, it really taught me it gave me my voice where I got brave enough to fight back a little bit, and professionally. I wasn't like starting to yell and curse out people that I worked with, but it gave me this sense of assertiveness that I think was really missing in my life, and where I would fight back professionally, like, no, we're not discharging this person for X, Y, and Z. And I would come up with very clinical, very detailed reasons.
You have to be that person's advocate because no one else will.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Circle back to, because I give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the biggest thing that my comeback or my fight to everybody was, well, they're just going to be back here tomorrow. And when they are, who are you going to yell at? You're going to yell at me, because we were in charge of ensuring that there was a safe discharge plan for this person. So by this logic, if you're telling me to discharge them now and my plan is not 100% and they come back in, you're just going to yell at me anyway. So let's just skip that part and stop.
So it
some doctors love
that voice.
Yes,
that
very much so.
Needed. So one
that
thing
the patient
that
needed and that I needed, I think, too.
One thing that is often kind of part of being a mental health professional as compared to other healthcare professionals is other healthcare professionals, I feel they get to see people long term, like the family physician. They see the good, the bad, the transformations. But with mental health professionals, when our work is done, we don't get to see the person anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a really good feeling, but for me, it's a sad feeling because I liked working with this client. It was something that I want to see them continue to grow, but I have to kind of learn on and lean on to these successes. What are some of these moments that you've had as a mental health professional? Some of the best moments that you've experienced being one?
Being told, thank you, you saved my life.
We don't get that as often as we should, but when we do, it just hits so hard.
And I got it from an 18-year-old.
Wow.
So this was somebody who I was working with for some time, at least 3 years. Long history of just wanting to hurt themselves, long significant history. And we made, and they said it to me at points, the progress that they saw. So the termination sort of happened because I was leaving the practice. This is also one of the cases where I probably was hanging on for a bit too long. But it just so happened that this is how termination was happening. And they said, like, you saved my life. And I think I almost bit my tongue so hard it came off because I was trying to stop myself from crying in that moment. I'm finding out I'm a crier during this episode.
That's okay. Crying is a natural, normal reaction and emotion to have.
So that's one of the many highlights that I've had. I've gotten to feel that a few times, actually. So I've actually been very lucky and very grateful There was that. And I also, and I still have it. Do I have it here? I do. Hold on. So somebody, I hope they're not mad that I'm using it as a bookmark, but it also does show how much I care. Somebody that I was working with in rehab came to continue with me in a private sense, and they gave me their first NA chip.
Oh, wow.
And some cultures within NA and AA is you share a chip with somebody who made an impact in your life within your sobriety. And they gave this to me, and again, bit my tongue so hard because I almost cried. And I got text messages continuously after we ended. And interestingly enough, it was one of those situations where the care, they needed a little bit more than what I was able to offer. So we needed to refer out. They still kept in touch, and still sober, and will text me periodically to say, this is a year, this is a year and a half. And it's, again, I got to feel like, holy crap, what I do here, or the impact, really does make a difference.
It matters.
Yeah. And I still hold on to this. I am using it as a bookmark, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way, because I love this.
It's a keepsake.
Yes.
For me, I had one experience, because, again, we don't get these experiences very often. Not a lot of people will just thank you for really helping them. You see how they're doing and how they're growing, but the explicit thank you is not something we get. And I'm not in this line of work to get these thank yous.
Mm-hmm.
But when we do get it, it just hits that special part in your heart. And a few weeks ago, I had a client that I've been working with her for a little over a year, and they were in a very abusive relationship for 17 years, and they had recently gotten out like a year or so prior to coming to start to work with me. They were off of work in like complete downward spiral. And we worked together every week, every 2 weeks for almost like a year, to the point where she no longer has like clinical symptoms that meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. So she's in remission. She's back at work in a new department and thriving, engaged and getting married soon to someone new. And she
Love it.
told me how much I had made an impact and how much this past year changed her life. And that just made my week.
We're not in it for the thank you, but I will say it's sometimes not 100% needed, but it is very, very nice to get that. Again, what I'm doing really matters, because like you said at the start of this, sometimes we just get so in just like the daily, okay, let's go, client, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Right.
Someone's suicidal, treatment plan, intervention,
safety plan, things like but when we stop and we hear that, it's like, oh, that's right, these things actually have such a significant meaning. Because I know that happens with me too, like, oh, what is this actually doing? How am I helping somebody? Until I get the phone call of like, hey, the application went through, we got approved for services, he's starting on Sunday, thank you for all your help. And I'm like, oh, right. because in the long run, you having these respite services is going to help him, it's going to help you, it's going to help her, it's going to help everybody. And it's like, right, I'm the bridge, I'm the connection, this does work. And I think that just keeps us going. It keeps us like motivated in a sense too, to like, okay, this is why, again, not the thank you is why I'm doing this, but the good that I can do, and the fact that I give a damn is actually showing.
And I think this discussion and this show is just going to be another vehicle that we can have so many other mental health professionals just talk about these experiences and kind of peer back behind the curtain to show that we are people, we
Mm-hmm.
have lived experience, um, and that we care. On Twitter, and I know in the past year, I've been seeing this debate in like the psychology Twitter. I don't know if you've kind of fallen into that algorithm within Twitter of seeing this combat of mental health professionals trying to help, and then people like striking back and essentially saying
Mm.
that we're we're gatekeeping services, but
Yeah.
we're not trying to do that. Any therapist worth their salt will have a sliding scale and will have pro
Mm-hmm.
bono clients. And if they can't, they will know someone and they'll find something.
Right. Ever since I started doing what I'm doing now, um, I have learned that the gatekeeping can be real. I don't think on our part. I think it's more on a, not to get too political, but on much more of a societal built
Mhm.
connotation that there is this gatekeep, and that it's expensive. And because even I was sort of said it when I was in grad school, it's like I can't afford it. And come to find out, I had 5 free sessions. Oh, okay. Um, there are services out there that I think aren't at the forefront, unfortunately. But what's interesting and what I have learned just within this past year, make phone calls,
Mhm.
right? So the other aspect of what I do, and I didn't talk about it really because
Mhm.
it's part time. It really wasn't major,
Mhm.
but I take um and do EAP calls, which is employee assistance
Mhm.
program phone calls. And I took that job like, nah, I'm not gonna get many phone calls. Nope. I was so wrong. I wasn't funny. And
It's
it
unreal how
yeah.
much demand there is. Again, here in my small little corner in Canada, we are not very many psychologists. I think we, in our province of 700 some thousand people, we're pretty small. We're under 1,000 psychologists.
Mhm.
I got my license last year, and I got license number 699.
Wow. Wow.
There are not a lot of us, and I have a wait list of a couple months because I try to keep my caseload to a point where I can like periodically take new people, but I know some colleagues that have a year, 2 year wait list. I have a client that I'm trying to get assessed for adult autism, and it's a
Hmm.
2 year wait.
I can safely say, while our number is bigger than that, our population both, and I'll speak for New York in particular because that's where I work, we're experiencing the same exact thing right now.
And I think it's
Where,
a systemic issue
yes, very much
over
so.
Canada and the US, and of what I can see online everywhere in the world, just
Yeah.
due to the pandemic.
There is a significant need for an increase in mental health professionals.
Mhm.
Um, and I think two, again, there's such a need for systemic change, systemic access to this, funding to specific programs. Um, you mentioned uh, like corrections and stuff. It's funny enough. I was talking with Amanda um, about reentry services, and I said in where I used to live in that borough alone, there was one program and one case manager for that
Wow.
program, one clinician, excuse me, for that program. And I said, think about it. Where the
That should be
borough
just
that I used to,
crumbling and bursting at the seams.
the borough that I used to live in, used to have a jail on it. It closed down, but I'm like, the borough that had one of the most prominent jails and prisons did not think to have a positive reentry program? Neither here nor there. But again, these programs are criminally underfunded. One of the reasons that I'm still not working anymore within developmentally disabled and with special needs, unfortunately, is because of the funding. There's not money in it. And I hate saying that, but there also is the reality that, we need to get paid, we need to live.
We have
And
student
working
loans
in
to
that
pay for.
student loans to pay for. Biden may or may not do things.
We have
But
something similar here, and it's different, and it's not my area because I work with adults more, and I work with students at a university level. But we
Mhm.
have a crisis in our province of school psychologists, where I think at last count there were like 30 vacancies in the school system, just in the French system. There are
Mm.
not enough psychologists, and our I'm not going to use the bad word, but our education minister decided that rather than pay psychologists their worth, they're going to be training teachers' aides and teachers to essentially do psychoed assessments.
It's starting to be a little bit of an informal practice here too, unfortunately.
Take the
I have a
overworked
good
teachers and assess the
yeah.
students, and it
I have a good friend of mine who's a teacher, and he's told me positive stories,
mm,
but he's also told me horror stories, more so of just how sometimes things are run. It's never about the kids. Everybody says, "Oh, the kids are awful. The kids are awful." He's like, "No, they're not. There's just there's a lot more other issues that are going on that need to be addressed that aren't being addressed." So there's a lot at play. The one, I don't even know if you want to call it a good thing necessarily, but the one thing that COVID did sort of do is increase the knowledge and the need for mental health. Um, but I think unfortunately now that demand is being met with, it's not gatekeeping, it's just lack of availability. When I get a phone call from services in New York City that they're a year out, that scares me. Because what do you mean you're a year out? How can you be a year out? I have somebody who is chronically in need of you of more intensive services, and you're telling me it's going to be a year?
mm,
And so what happens? Right? The cycle continues. People decompensate, people go into the hospitals. Hospitals get overrun. Hospitals then refer out, and hospitals do take priority for discharges and for appointments. So now those appointments get filled, but there's also going to be that point where the outpatient providers can't even keep up with the inpatient admissions, which we're starting to see,
so it's this
unfortunately.
perpetual cycle
Yeah,
that has been looming, and COVID just made explode.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the medical and mental health practitioners, because a lot of the medical practitioners that are burning out are falling onto the mental health professionals that are bursting at the seams as well, and it's creating this crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question for you and for all of our guests that we're going to have is, what do you do outside of being a mental health professional? I know a lot of what you do, but help some of the people understand what it is that you do outside of your work.
um. So outside of playing Destiny, no. Um. Honestly, it's a lot of video games. More so now, it's been a lot of making time, hanging out with friends. Um, going out to eat. This body doesn't keep itself, you know. Um,
Gotta
I
re-experience all the things from COVID.
absolutely, yeah, concerts. I just saw a show again recently, but I think it's more so interacting with people again as much as possible. All friends that I haven't seen in a while, family, is a big part of what I'm trying to sort of rekindle again. Um, but outside of that, when it comes to just like general nonsense, there's comic books galore behind me. Which way do I have to go? There's nerdy things there and up there that I collect. I just got into records because I am starting to embrace my inner hipster. So I have a record player now.
You didn't do it
Um,
while you were at NYU. You're just doing it
I
now
didn't.
because you have
I
adult
was
money now.
I have adult money and I spend it on childish things. Um,
Do you see what is behind me?
no, but I love your things though. um, but no, behind the therapist is a true just nerd in and of itself. Both comic book, video game, music, concerts. Oh, I can't wait to go back to concerts. I have two already I've already bought tickets for. Just like, no, I'm going. Um, that's my biggest thing, if nothing else, is concerts and music.
I can't wait for some of the concerts. We haven't really been a big concert going couple, me and Jesse, but it's something we used to enjoy, and even comedy shows.
Hmm.
We really loved. A couple of years back, we saw Gabriel Iglesias. He came to the city and so good.
He's
And
hysterical.
and I can't wait to start having more of these experiences again. I just recently started going to the movies again. I have my home theater here that I built over many years, and I love it, but it's not the same as actually going to a theater. So
Yeah.
my first movie back was The Batman, and that
Oh,
was amazing. And me and one of my buddies are going to see Multiverse of Madness in a couple of weeks when it's coming
can't
out.
wait. That I can't wait for.
And this is kind of what I've been trying to do to keep me sane, is falling back into these hobbies and
Hmm.
being the psychology nerd that I am. I've been diving head deep into trainings. I finished my problematic gaming certification over the
Yes.
weekend, so I'm now a certified problematic gaming specialist with Geek
Congrats on
Therapeutics.
that.
So shout out to Tony and Geek Therapeutics. I'm almost done my certified geek therapist certification there as well. I just need my supervision, and I finished my exam, so I get that certification, and working with a lot of things in the back end on GMH. I have a lot of ideas that I just have to put fingers to keyboard on.
Hmm.
But one thing I'm really liking with some of the trainings that I've done with Geek Therapeutics, it bringing me back and giving me new perspectives on things that I've always had been using, or that I love. So kind of rewatching a lot of the Marvel movies is one of my plans through that therapeutic lens. So I'm supposed to be getting a new projector in a couple weeks fingers crossed. It's been like a year coming to get this replaced, and I'm gonna go on
Ooh.
a MCU rewatch through a therapeutic lens, and I can't wait. And for those who haven't seen Moon Knight yet, it is amazing.
I have not seen it yet.
They are
And
again, DID is very difficult to portray, and again, they're not like portraying it in a very realistic way because it's a superhero in a comic book, but they're
right.
doing a really good job for this story
Okay.
within
Okay.
this uh, Egyptian mythology framework. So they're doing a really good job with it.
Very cool.
One of
Definitely need to
the
watch that.
one of the trainings that I did with Geek Therapeutics with Dr. Gamology that I've been in talks with lately is about the game Journey from that game company. And I had played
Yes.
Journey years ago.
Yeah.
And
Good game. Great game.
watching his video on it, and one of my big passions and part of my thesis was the hero's journey, as to the name of this show called the hero's journey. And he turned the hero's journey into the game journey and everyone's journey becoming a mental health professional. And I thought he did such a good job that I replayed Journey last weekend, getting all the symbols, because I played it on PS3, played it again on PS4,
Yeah.
and still haven't got a PS5. They're impossible to find. But got all of the hidden symbols to get my white robe in the game.
Ooh.
Because that shows that I have achieved this. And when you meet these new people on that journey, they know that you can be that guide. If you remember the game, you have these visions of that person in the white robe, and you get through that journey and you become that person in the white robe for the next
Right.
person. And it's so much of a good parallel of becoming a mental health professional, of going through that journey and putting on that white robe, being able to help people. And to me, it's a privilege to be able to help people.
I agree. And I like how that's put, and yeah. It's a privilege, it's an honor, and I also go back to at times I have fun. I enjoy what I do.
And
And
using geek therapy for me has made therapy much more fun.
mhm.
I was actually talking to someone that was doing supervision the other night, saying, I talked about Avatar The Last Airbender 3 times this week, and it was awesome.
I love it.
As I was wearing still am wearing my Avatar The Last Airbender Aang socks.
Even better. I'm due for a rewatch on that.
Oh, and it's kind of part of my plan as well, kind of rewatching it through that therapeutic lens. I think that people have this perception of mental health professionals that we are these stuffy individuals, but if you find the right therapist, that right fit, things can be better and things can change more than you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think this wraps it up for our first episode, and I think it went well, and I hope everyone really enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed this conversation,
This was
and
great.
I hope this is going to be a long-lasting series for us and at Guardians, because I have a bunch of people lined up that I want to get on the show that have amazing stories, and I think will resonate with a lot of people.
I am very excited for that, and I can't wait.
So I want to thank everyone for joining, and we will be back shortly. Hopefully, he's going to be in the next couple weeks. I think we're going to be roping Joe into this next episode just to have him talk about his journey of helping build Gardens MH.
We're gonna have to lasso him in, I think, but I
Yeah.
think we can do it.
So thank you, everyone, and we will see you during our next episode.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yes, I can. And I see that